Okay, so this is what's gonna happen. Hello everyone, I'm gonna go through a tier list for Hololive official card games set 1. It's been a month or so. Set 2 is coming out soon, and we have had a bit of tournaments, or rather quite a lot of tournaments. We have the results, and I have personally played in some of them. I can go through with you what I feel is the best and what's the worst decks. And I think it's better off if I just start off with the ratings, and then I'll just explain what each deck does and why each deck is there. So starting off with the worst decks, we'll have Sora, Louis, ASCII, and Kovo. So these are the worst decks, and you will rarely see them. You will see them, might get a few surprises, and then realize it's not that big of a deal. And yeah, so these are unfortunately the weakest decks in my opinion right now as of set 1, because right now set 1 is kind of a fast-paced meta due to kanata. So yeah, if your deck can't match up to that speed, or rather it doesn't have the tools to stop it from happening, and yeah, you're gonna struggle a lot. So in C tier, I would put Pekora and normal Suisei. When I mean normal Suisei, I mean the first few weeks of Suisei decks was basically Suisei with Muna, but over time Suisei has evolved and has different variants right now. And yeah, so speaking of those different variants, Suisei Iris, Suisei Roha, Muna Zeta, and Po Kiara Polka, yeah. So these decks are the ones you'll see probably one you'll probably see one in every tournament you go to. Someone's probably playing one of these just to try out their decks. And yeah, these decks are decent, but they might struggle against the best decks, but usually not as it's like a 75-25 or like 25-75 matchup. So yeah, these decks are, and usually they are quite fun in their own way, but yeah, I'll explain it more later. So A tier will be ASCII, uh, Polka, pure Polka, or multiple modern, or at least 12 fans Polka, as some people call it. And then Red Promise, or Bay Promise, basically Promise that runs Bay. And then lastly, S tier will be Green Promise, or Pekora Promise, Kanata Promise, Kanata, and Pure Promise. So yeah, these are the current tiers right now, or the current rankings. Uh, these decks are interchangeable depending on how comfortable you are playing them. Uh, but overall, I think these are the current placings. So yeah, let's start with the best, I guess, or maybe we should start with the worst. Yeah. So Sora is a oh wait, no, that was Kobo, yeah. So Kobo, she kinda does nothing right now. Unfortunately, her second doesn't do a lot of damage. Oshi skill doesn't do a lot of things. One holo power to do 20 damage is not a lot. She likes the early game pressure, and her second, yeah, is lacking quite a bit as well. Even though you do get a lot of RAM, it's not enough in my opinion for it to really matter. So Kobo is in a really weak spot right now. Hopefully the new ID will change that, but as of now, looking through the cards, I don't think it's gonna help a lot as well. So, yeah, so Kobo is kind of weak. Doesn't have draws as well. So that is a big factor. So in this meta, you kind of want draws, you want a lot of damage, and you want to set up fast. Like you want to be able to do things very fast. Yeah, so next is ASCII. ASCII kind of in a similar position, but whereas She doesn't do she doesn't do a lot of damage as well. Relying on X, which is fine, but the fact that you are a center based deck right now means you are prone to kanata, and when your whole deck is about healing off your damage off a center, it doesn't matter if you can heal if in the end the health is gonna be set to 50 by Kanata's Oshi. So yeah, Asuki is in a very weak spot. Even with her X, she doesn't do a lot. I think she does 100, is it 120? 100, yeah, 120 with the two attached. Plus 50 to white, which is neat, but that doesn't even one shot the seconds that Promise has or Kanata has. So yeah, Aki as well does not have good RAM, good form of cheer generation. Only way is from her first that gets you a top deck cheer if you have a 2 attach, but it requires you to attack. So compared to the other decks like Pekora on Bloom can just top deck a cheer. Asuki can roll dice, multiple ways to roll dice and get her cheer back. The Oshi skill also gives her a cheer back. And her first idol lets you move cheers around. So she has a lot of ways, and Sora Asuki as well. If you roll even, you roll odd, you get to draw, you get to ram. So yeah, Aki has none of that, which is quite unfortunate. And she only has healing, which, yeah, currently healing is not a very good effect right now because a lot of things just get one shot, and everything goes by so fast that by the time you get value of your heal, that unit's probably dead. Yep. So Louis is interesting because her cards are actually very good, except her second. The second is the main reason that she's not good right now. So her second effect is that she can put 1 to 2 Holomems with Holo X back to her hand, which is basically currently only her, I guess, because you don't really run Iroha. Holo X itself doesn't really function well, so we have to wait for more support. And yeah, so besides that, her main arts is that she does 60 and then she discards 1 to 5 cards, and the 1 to 5 cards for each card discarded will buff by 20 damage, so that's maximum of 160 damage, which is a big cost for 160 damage because you have to discard 5 cards. Even with your holo power, that's like you're looking to discard about 2 to 3 cards and then maybe use 2 as holo power, which is quite a big cost. Even though you salvage 2 from your archive, it is way too big of a cost for too little of a reward, right? There are many decks that can hit 160 without that big of a cost, right? Suisei can hit it, Pekora technically can hit it, Asuki can hit it, Polka can hit it quite easily. Promise hits it with just playing the game. Kanata hits it as well, relatively. Well, actually, relative. Kanata can hit 160. Without discarding their hand. So Louis has this weakness. The next part is that she's also a center based deck. You kind of want to charge. You kind of want to have your Louis at the center because of one of her mascots, which draws you a card to make up for it. But she has to be in center. So because of that, she also dies to Kanata, and guess what? Kanata also has plus 50 to raid. And what else does raid does not have is cheer generation. So you have to commit 3 cheers for a below average cost of an attack that will get one shotted by the meta decks anyway. So that's why Louis is arguably, you could argue it's even worse than these two, but I think the rest of the deck is very good, or at least the rest of her line is very good. Her Bloom effect, discard 1, draw 2 is very, very good, and pretty much the core of the deck. Unfortunately, you cannot bloom over itself. I wish it did. It would make the deck a lot more flexible and maybe even splashable in other decks. Yeah, but other than that, her collab debut is extremely weak. Her first is okay, but is still relatively weak. She doesn't have any early game, and her late game sucks. Yeah, so Louis is not good. Sora, on the other hand, is actually decent. I think the weakest part has to be her Oshi, because she gets to move one cheer. Doesn't matter too much if you play pure Sora. It matters more if you run Sora Oshi in other decks. But her once per turn, once per game skill, is basically she gets to swap and gets power. But there's a reason why people don't really run it, because that effect is also tied to a event card in the game. So why would you sacrifice your Oshi just to play an effect that that already has a card version of it? So yeah, Sora Oshi is pretty relatively weak. Uh, the best part of Sora has to be her second, where if you do play it as collab, draws two cards, and then basically can do infinite damage if you are lucky enough. But in theory, it is infinite damage. You will kill anything you want, and even if you don't, it's still quite good. Uh, you get to draw two cards from your deck. So, and it's relatively tanky as well. 210 HP is quite good. You will survive most things for at least 2 turns. And yeah, Sora also has the Bloom effect, draw one card. Draw is always good, so in the end Sora is okay, but her weakness is that she doesn't do much outside of just drawing cards. Her buzz is very weak. She's reliant on ASCII, kind of. Yeah, the buzz version is reliant on ASCII. And other than that, she doesn't do too much. She kinda needs to be splashed in other decks. But playing Sora by herself is kind of weak. But infinite damage, so it could be here, but I'm gonna put it here. So next is Suisei, specifically with Muna. This was a early deck build that people have been running, mostly because both of them are blue color, so it seems obvious at first. So people played Suisei, Muna, and then they realized the deck is still too slow. There's not enough energy, deck's too slow, and it dies pretty fast. So people have evolved and run these two variants instead. Maybe you'll still see some Muna versions, but you usually don't have enough energy to make use of Muna. Some still do, just to run first Muna to get the blue cheer. But overall the deck's too slow. But if it's against other slow decks, it will do fine. It will actually might even win some games, and specifically for all the Suisei decks, they are quite deadly against Buzz decks. Buzz decks like Polka, Buzz decks like Muna Zeta. Those decks have to watch out for Suisei, because she could potentially just take out 4 lives in a blink of an eye, just like that. So yeah, Suisei is a threat to take note of, but right now the Muna version is too slow. So we'll explain more with the other variants. Yep. Then there's Pekora. Similar case with Aki. She does have heals, which kinda useless right now, but it helps for Pekora, I guess. Mainly she has a lot of RNG. She can break the RNG, but other than that, the best part of her Oshi is the fact that she can recover and she can salvage all the cheers that people uh that the Holomems lose, which is very good because you maintain your tempo, you have good cheer efficiency, and then yeah, you don't really run out of cheers in this deck. Uh, The main issue is that you kind of don't have draws. Like your best draw is gonna be, what is it? I think it's the top four for Muna and Pekora. Some mono Pekoras run that, but other than that, some Pekoras run Iroha to protect the Pekora. But it is just a bit too much energy requirement to sustain. But other than that, Pekora is actually fine. Like it has some cheese in it. Like it has the first where just rolls a dice and then you could just do 110 damage if you get 6, which can just completely throw someone off tempo. Uh, but other than that, yeah, her second as well doesn't really hit too hard. Like if you average 30, let's say you average 3 for your rolls, you're gonna get like at least 150, right? Yeah, 150, which is decent. Yeah, but it has plus to blue, so yeah, greens are usually the blue killers so far, at least. But greens are also meant to kill white, but they don't do a good job, so who knows. Other than that, yeah, Pekora is okay, but she doesn't do well other than managing her cheer. She actually, she is used more in other decks because of how good that cheer efficiency is. So yeah. Next is Suisei Iris and Suisei Roha, which are both very different decks in how they play, their game plan, at least as well as deck builds. So for Suisei Iris, you kind of just whack early with your first Iris, gain 70 power, both of them on the front, and then you just kill things early, and then they are forced to kind of trade with you to get rid of the first Iris. And then because of that, you gain energy from the dead Iris, goes to your Suisei, and then your Suisei goes ham, and then it kills them off because they've already lost quite a bit of life from first Iris, and you can slowly snowball the game from there. The main part is that you also get to run uh the idle mic because both Suisei and Iris have the song hashtag, so you can use the idle mic, which is great because you have no way to find Iris other than that. And also you can still play pure. You don't have to change your cheers at all because Iris doesn't need. Iris can run any color, which is so dumb. But yeah, that is the game plan of Suisei Iris. Just hit you early, and people will think where is Suisei Polka, because they've probably seen some lists going around. Suisei Polka doesn't is just an inferior version of Suisei Iris because Suisei Polka you kind of need to run your Polka debuts, your Polka first to search the fans and the fans themselves, and then bust Polka. That's 20 cards at least gone from your deck. So for Iris, you can just run debut, maybe the collab debut, and then first Iris, and you save so much deck space for more support cards. So yeah, that's why Suisei, I wouldn't include Suisei Polka because it's just straight up worse than Suisei Iris, and they both do the same thing. Yeah, and it also runs pen light if I'm not wrong because you have a lot of Suisei has a lot of spare holo power that you don't really use, and yeah, you can use that holo power to cheer and ramp yourself up. So for Suisei Iroha, it's more passive. It uses the Iroha first to bodyguard, tank for your Suisei if she's in the center, or just be a fat wall for your opponent to kill. But they also don't want to kill it because if they kill it, it will go into your Suisei, and then your Suisei gets to snowball early. So it's a lot more planning for your Suisei Iroha. You do run the mic, the Suisei mic, because that way you get to snowball off your second Suisei and make sure you can loop her every turn. Because if you use a skill, she goes from 4 to 2, the mic gives her 3, and then next turn you get 4 back. So you can do it all over again. Other than that, it has made a top list in the Bloom Cup recently, but unfortunately it's only top 128 before it can be found. So hopefully we see more of these lists. But mostly we've seen Suisei Iroha. Maybe we'll see more Suisei Iris. But overall, I think the Suisei Iroha is more stable and you can plan more with it. And it also runs the Holo Fan Circle, if I'm not wrong. Pretty sure it does. Yeah, it does. So it rolls dice, send a cheer, so it can ram itself, but it is RNG, but you have so much space in your deck, you might as well. Then Suisei also has to rely on, yeah, because you get so much energy, you get to use your debut, your collab debut, which archives energy to draw to. Actually very good early on. Yeah, so Suisei is worth noting to look out for. Like she could honestly, I might put her here because as time goes on, Suisei players get better, and then they can set up better, and she can kill or at least be on par with some of these decks sometimes. But other than that, in general, Suisei is in a rough spot right now due to the meta being so fast that she kind of has to evolve with time. Afterwards is Muna Zeta. This is a very surprising deck. That actually topped the first Bloom Cup, made it in top 8, and the same player did it again, but the issue is that he's the only one that has topped with it so far. Like, I have not seen anyone else get any results with it, or at least anyone play it, because it's so hard. You have to have very good knowledge about the game. You need to know what your opponent you know what their deck does. You need to know how to maximize your energy usage, and you need to know how to calculate damage very well, because the whole plan of this deck is that it chips your opponent, it uses Kobo Oshi to poke their back row, and eventually all their members will be very low health, and then you start killing them, and then they all trickle down, and then you just win from there. The main issue is that you are running double buzz, so finding them might be an issue if you don't run Pekora, and the fact that you are losing 2 lives a lot of the times, even if you are 6 life deck with Kobo Oshi. So you do have to it is a very hard deck to pilot. But if you are that guy, this deck could go here, especially if the Zeta coin flip effect to negate some crucial moments and possibly survive. Even though the guy says it's not necessary, it is still a huge factor to keep in mind, especially for the opponents. So yeah, there's Munazeta. Next is Pokiara. Basically, we usually call it 8 fans, or yeah, but I call it Pokiara because Kiara is a win con in this deck. The main difference between these two is that uh, this the Kiara runs first and second Kiara, whereas Pure Polka does not run any of them and just runs debut Kiara at a very low count. So yeah, Kiara is very stable, but it is slower than normal Polka, which is why it is losing out to it in terms of meta. Because first Kiara mills your deck, and then second Kiara takes advantage of the mill, and then it does well against green decks, which are also slow decks. So when ASCII was around here, started getting results, this deck would do well into it. But the main issue is that second Kiara is a bit too weak for its effect. Like you will get a strong hit on the first time you use it, but on the second time you use it, it's quite underwhelming because it basically gets 10 power for each holomem you shuffle. For each holomem in your archive. So ideally you're gonna have like by the time you reach your first second Kiara, you'll probably have like 2 to 3 at best in your archive, or ideally you're looking for that 6. Let's say you get that 6, you're still only gonna hit for 140, and then you mill them back. Then next turn, you're only gonna hit for like 90, which is very low for 3 energy, especially for red 3 energy. If that card dies, you lose so much energy and you are basically screwed. So that is the main issue with Kiara. It's not really okay. It's not really center based, but most of the time you want your Kiara to be the center, and your Polkas to be the collab. But yeah. Other than that, second Kiara, I think is a bit uh not necessary in the deck, which is why I main Polka, pure Polka, after playing it. After playing normal Pokiara, a lot of times I just found the card bad and I dropped it. Yeah. Other than that, yes, the normal fans package with Polka. Just get 8 fans and then kill with the bus. And then what people do as well is they just sack the bus Polka to give 2 energy to that Kiara, so it kind of solves the energy problem. But again, it's you're losing a bus which potentially hits harder than your Kiara herself. So yeah, I will put it around here. If it is better in the long games against like ASCII, but other than that, I don't think it's that great compared to normal Polka. So going to A tier, this I can talk a lot about because I see this basically every day. ASCII has fallen off recently because I guess people just didn't want to play her, or she doesn't do well against the white decks as much as expected. Mainly because she doesn't do much early. Like she kind of her whole game plan is to just spam the board with members and then hope one of them gets second, and then from there you kill with seconds non-stop. And the main issue is that it is weak to aggro early, which is basically this deck and Kanata. So it will get checked by those. But against Promise, it actually has a good matchup. If the matchup goes too long, ASCII will most likely win the Promise as the game goes on longer. And yeah, ASCII is very consistent. She has very good sheer efficiency. She can move the energy around. She gets to roll dice, get a lot of energy. She the main issue is she's lacking damage. Like she's either gonna hit 120 or she's gonna hit 100, or maybe on average 150. She might cheese the 200 if she rolls the 1, but uh that's not that doesn't even one shot some of the decks, or at least uh I guess it's not really that important at that point, or she could just dice rig it if she needed that. So you should be playing in mind that she could hit that 200. But other than that, ASCII is consistent. She just floods the board. She gets to run 8 top 4 for Holomems, which is insane. So she doesn't really run out of hand. You can't really outvalue her, and you just have to kill her early, so she doesn't. She's forced to. You have to kind of aggro out the amount of cards she's putting every turn, and hopefully she doesn't get her second draw and get to cheese some damage, and then you couldn't take out her seconds in time. And yeah, that's how you mainly fight this deck. But other than that, it has fallen off due to being too slow, I guess. The 6th life um of either running ASCII Oshi or Pekora Oshi still hasn't been really decided, in my opinion. People are still running both. I personally think the ASCII Oshi is better because you get to dice rig, and you still have energy management, or like you still have enough energy, but you do rely more on a second which gets the cheers from dice roll. So there is that to take note of. Whereas Pekora, you just kind of, if it dies, you get the energy back. That's it. So yeah, it is personal preference. I personally prefer the ASCII one just because of the higher potential. But yeah, There is ASCII. So there's Polka now. My main deck. I can talk a lot about this deck, but I'll try to keep it short. Mainly, the main difference is that it runs three types of fans. It runs the Pecora fans, the Nosagi, and it runs Pecora Spotlight, which searches for buzz whenever you roll even. So this deck has a very straightforward plan, which is just stack fans. Just stack as much fans as you can, as much as possible, and then kill your opponent so fast and early that they can't keep up and they will just crumble very fast. Assuming everything goes well by turn 2. So with your whole polka package, you can search whatever fans. Ideally, surprisingly, you want to search for KFP first for Kiara if you get your Kiara early, and then you just dig through your deck, play your managers, play your Nodokas, keep refilling your hand, put more fans, and then suddenly your Polka's hitting for 150 each, or maybe even 180, and then it just starts one-shotting seconds. And then your opponent can't answer back because Polka is 240 HP. And then you maintain your tempo with the Kiara's revival skill. Kiara Oshi's revival skill. So yeah, this deck is really good. But there is a glaring weakness right now, which is that the fact that the current meta, Kanata, eats up buzz decks for breakfast. It being able to possibly cause 3 damage on a buzz polka or like any buzz decks, as well as set those buzzes to 50 health is quite devastating. So Kanata is a major counter to polka, and Promise as well. Iris has plus 50 rate, and they can mitigate the damage done to your polka to kind of survive more. So yeah, these two decks are complete counters, which is why this deck wouldn't be here. If not, it kind of would be in here if they didn't have if Kanata didn't exist. Well yeah, it's over there in general. And over time, this was called 12 fans because it ran 12 copies of fans, but I think we're gonna move on to a point where she doesn't need 12 fans because 12 fans is overkill, and I've started to run 11 fans actually, so I can put in more tech cards, and then it doesn't really matter because Pecora's fan is the last priority for you to search for. It's kind of just there because you play Pecora, not because that you need it to be on Pecora. So yeah, but expect this deck to stick around as long as more fans keep being made. So far, I don't think the deck will change in set 2, but I think it will still be around this tier. That's how good the package is, in my opinion. So now, yeah, that's all for it. That's all I'll say for it. Next, we'll move on to Promise Bay or Red Promise. So basically, the plan is abuse first Iris, right? You use Bay to fetch Iris from your drop, from your archive, and then you ping for collab damage, and then you basically run second Bay to screw your opponent's hand, mulligan your own, and then you get a free 100 damage attacker for 2 energy. And yeah, your deck will consist of half red, half white, and it's completely fine because for some reason both Mume and Iris, wait, let me check on Iris. I'm pretty sure Iris also has the same effect. Yeah, both Mume and Iris, they only need 1 white energy, and the rest of the 3 energies, the rest of the 2 energies can be anything, which is kind of unfair in my opinion. I do not know why it has it can be 2 of anything. Most of the other decks are like minimum 2 of their color, but yeah, for some reason Promise can just run 2 any color and 1 of their own color. So yeah, you can just search out that 1 white with Crony. So getting the wrong energy is really never an issue for this variant of the deck. Same with Pecora Promise. Just that instead of using Bay salvage your iris and to get back uh to hit for 2 energy 100. Very cheap actually. Sometimes if I'm not wrong, people actually run Kiara Oshi instead. Actually, this should be Kiara Oshi instead, and because you get to revive your Bay, and basically have 6 lives, and you can search any member from archive, which is basically first iris, or if you happen to lose a second, you can search that second back, which is something regular promises don't really have. So yeah, that's Raid Promise. The main issue is that yeah, Bay, there's no reason to run Bay when Bay kind of gets eaten by the rest of the normal promises, and Kanata, because they have plus 50 rate. So you're kind of just playing Promise, but you're giving yourself the red color, which is very bad for set 1 right now. Pakura Promise, on the other hand, is starting to pop up more and more. It's very good because it's very energy efficient or cheer efficient. Pekora gets to salvage all of that lost energy. Promise main weakness kind of is cheer management, because yeah, even though with Crony, they are so reliant on having 3 energy for their seconds. It's very hard to maintain that once their second dies. And so Pekora solves the problem by making sure you never run out of energy, gives you 6 lives as well, so you can get even more energy, and then just spam your seconds and kill your opponents. So yeah, that's Pekora. Pekora Kanata. Sorry, yeah, that's Pekora Promise. Kanata Promise. I think makes more sense to talk about Kanata and Promise individually first. So Kanata is quite straightforward. She's an aggro deck. She's a super fast aggro deck, and she kills most of the decks before they even get to do anything. That's pretty much it. That's why she's doing so well. She gets most of her stuff. She doesn't even need second to win. She can just win just by using first, because all they really need is Upao and X, and yeah, you are dead. They set your second to 50 HP, and then they punish you with that 50 HP with a second, doing 2 lives. Yeah, that's not really fun. If they can't one shot it, just give 100 power. So yeah, Kanata is extremely strong right now, and a very big menace to a lot of decks. Like the meta basically revolves around, can you beat Kanata? No, well then you're not a good deck. Yeah, so what can beat Kanata is Promise, surprisingly to no one. Promise basically has everything. It has cheer generation, it has draws, it has deck searches, it has board power-ups, and all of these are basically free. It's quite insane. Promise also has form of control. They can mitigate damage, they can search for any event they want. If they even want, they can sabotage the opponent's board if they run second Crony, or if they run second Bay. Yeah, Promise has too much flexibility, and right now the main culprits has to be first Iris, giving such early aggro to a deck that's kind of more control-y, tempo-y. It's a huge issue because it means it can pressure from turn 2 onwards, and yeah, Promise can win the Kanata matchup just by either matching their aggro with their own aggro with first Iris, or they use their Mume skill to mitigate 50 damage, which turns Kanata's troubles into it makes it way harder for the Kanata to hit their thresholds. And then yeah, Promise basically wants you to kill them so they get energy, so it can handle aggro pretty well. Yeah, so that's Promise in a nutshell. Promise Kanata takes the best of both worlds. You're basically playing a Promise deck, a full complete deck that can do everything, and then you run Kanata leader. so you can get even more kill pressure, just in case for some reason your promises can't one-shot enemies. So just give them 100 power or set them to 50 health. And it's mainly to beat other promises, because if you set their second to 50 health, even if they mitigate 50, it's still gonna die to a 100 damage deck. So it is quite deadly, and yeah, it is the promise variant to beat regular promise. So yeah, that is what set 1 looks like right now. I am expecting a change in the meta with set 2. I do think set 1 will still have these two. Maybe Kanata goes down a bit depending on how they handle aggro in the future. Promise is probably gonna stay up there until set 3. Boca might drop a bit or might rise up. With how Shion looks right now, Boca has a good matchup against purple. ASCII is completely killed by purple. And unless green has something new, ASCII is not gonna change. So she will just drop like maybe here. And yeah. Suisei might do well more later. But we haven't seen the later buzzes as to what they do yet. I expect Pokiara to basically stay the same. This to stay the same unless people start playing more of it. Bay Promise is probably gone by now. Pekora, no change. Louis, no change. Aki, no change. Sora, no change. Kobo, no change. Yeah, I expect this to be the same. So yeah, I hope you guys like this tier list or found it useful. At least now you know what the meta is like. And some of these are personal opinions, but most of these, I mean, you could agree with the results that most of these are there. Maybe personally, I would probably, now that I look at it, I would probably change it more like this, something like that. It depends on, yeah, I think Suisei does beat these decks, so it's somewhere around here. Suisei could be here by the end of set 1, or you have to wait for more results to see. So yeah, I hope you guys agree with this list, or at least found this list useful. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.